Hello guys, this is Jack, and today we're going to be talking about Superman, the new James Gunn film that I just saw a few hours ago at the premiere. I'm going to go through, some of the small stuff about this film. I'm not going to spoil it too heavily because I don't think this film needs to be, spoiled because it's going to be the biggest movie of the year so far in terms of the summer. Let's just kind of do a little intro and kind of tell about what has been, the DC universe as of late. So if you don't remember correctly, James Gunn has taken over the DC studios and he is basically hitting the hard reset with Superman and all the DC characters instead of focusing with the Zack Snyder characters that have been boiling over the past couple of years.
Kal-El, no! Kal-El, no! Kal-El, no!
So once you start to understand that, and you also understand that the Snyderverse is completely different from what James Gunn is trying to do, then we can, talk about what this new movie is, which is basically a new iteration of Superman, or pretty much a return to form with Superman, as Superman is the Boy Scout, the superhero that is the American hero, compared to Snyder's iteration of the character, which was basically a kind of a Jesus superstar type of character. So with this film, let me start with kind of laying down the plot a little bit. So you have Superman who is kind of trying to fight off Lex Luthor and his goons. Two of his goons, one of them is an alien woman and another one is a thing that Lex Luthor has created named Ultraman, which I will not spoil here who he is, but it was a really interesting reveal, later in the movie. But you have Superman who, in the beginning, is getting his ass whooped by these two goons. He lands in Antarctica where his Fortress of Solitude is, and he recovers inside of the Fortress of Solitude. And then eventually he, heals and then goes back to Metropolis to fight off the other aliens that are trying to take over Metropolis. And from there, basically in the first 30 to 40 minutes, you have a lot of Superman action. You're seeing a lot of Superman fights. Just Superman doing a lot of heroic shit, should I say. And from there, also as well, it transfers to the normal Metropolis life of Clark Kent and how Clark Kent is, a reporter for the Daily Mail, he's kind of doing his own thing, working at the Daily Planet. He's, in a relationship with Lois Lane, and Lois Lane knows who Superman is and knows who Clark Kent's real identity is. And that kind of plays into, the normal life that we usually see with Superman. But even then, after, you start to establish the typical Superman stuff, there's a lot of more kind of extraterrestrial backstory that's happening beneath the story. As the film progresses, you'll see Superman kind of fighting off this interdimensional world that basically Lex Luthor has erupted from the several portals that he's created. And from there, he goes into this portal of another dimension, and he's eventually captured by Lex Luthor's goons. And the rest of the film is him kind of trying to fight out of the portal that he's stuck in. But even then, with all that boiling in your mind, this film is pretty straightforward. It's exactly what it's supposed to do, where basically James Gunn is giving you the best Superman experience that you've seen so far in your entire lifetime. I will say this, that even though the film doesn't slow down, it doesn't give you a lot of character development. Instead, it kind of focuses more on the action and the fight sequences and just the overall sci-fi elements of Superman's world, instead of focusing deeper into Clark Kent, Lois Lane. There is a moment in the beginning where you see Lois and Clark, they're fighting with each other as Superman or Clark obliges to, interview Lois, and Lois is interviewing him, and it's a whole thing, as you've seen in the trailers. But really, it was a really interesting scene when that happened, when they were interviewing each other. Eventually, that kind of turns into a thing where you kind of can tell that Lois doesn't really like Clark anymore, and the relationship's not working out. But then, towards the end of the film, you know they're going to get together again. But I will say this, David Cornsweet, who I've seen before. I've seen him in Twisters, and he was also in Pearl, the X trilogy with Mia Goth. He plays a really good Superman. I don't have any complaints as far as him playing, the superhero Boy Scout version of Superman instead of, the God figure that Zack Snyder tried to do with Superman. Here, he's pretty chill, calm. He has authority. He presents himself as a calm, a superhero, but also at the same time he has good intentions. He wants to kind of read people's minds as far as the good of humanity, and even more so, he really trusts a lot of people in his life, especially Lois, who is also a reporter for the Daily Planet. What I mean is Jimmy Olsen, who is Superman's best friend and sidekick, and a reporter for the Daily Planet. And also other characters appear in this film, like the mini Justice League, who are pretty much just Mr. Terrific, Guy Green Lantern, played by Nathan Fillion, and Hawkgirl, who both of them, they're all, hanging out at the Hall of Justice, and they're trying to do their own missions. But then yet again, they're also collaborating with Superman and helping him out with some of the aliens that are coming down to Metropolis. And then you also have Frank Grillo, who appears as Rick Flag, and also other small characters and cameos, which I won't, spoil here, that were just oh, that's cool. They're actually bringing this into, the universe. And again, going back to Lex Luthor, I think Nicholas Holt's performance of this film is really good. He does a good job kind of portraying Lex Luthor as an egomaniac billionaire who wants to control, destroy the Earth, and kind of, create chaos around Metropolis, and other characters that appear here. And I think the actress who plays Lois Lane is also really good. I don't really have too many complaints. I think the biggest thing is that there's a lot of fights, way too many fights, but it doesn't, have a breathing room where you can kind of sit a little bit and kind of focus on the character dynamics and some of the character motivations. It's more of just oh, we're just gonna, punch and fight for 2 hours straight. But even then, I can't really complain, because this is something that I really wanted with, Superman, especially, the last iteration of Superman, where it was, punching and fighting, but also at the same time, it kind of fell its stuff flat on its face with its themes of, being godly with Superman. But I think here it totally works. I really enjoy Gunn's sensibilities as far as the comedic motions throughout the film. It doesn't, become overbearing with, some of the Marvel quippy humor that you usually see with Gunn, but I think here it totally works and it feels very earnest. But aside from it not having breathing room or any, stretches of character development as far as the other characters who just pop up and then appear and then just disappear, even then, I still really enjoyed this, and I think it's a really good winning strategy for the DC new universe that Gunn is trying to do right now. It is a really good start, and I think it's something that people will definitely enjoy, especially if you have been kind of sour with the last iteration of Superman. I think this will win you back full-heartedly. So I give this a 4 out of 5, and I think, again, it's probably because I took out of it as an enjoyable experience. And I'm an easily pleasurable dude, so, take that as you will. But in reality, I would probably give this a 3.5 out of 5 if I really have to be stingy with my ratings and kind of the overall, just I gotta nitpick about, this and that. But even then, I still give this a 4 out of 5. As far as, Oscar prospects, I think Best Visual Effects is the good start here, because I think the visual effects here are pretty decent. There wasn't really a lot of blemishes of just oh, this was bad CGI, or oh, this moment here feels kind of off, or even then there wasn't a lot of clipping with the CGI that Gunn used, and I kind of was really locked in with the cinematography as far as the 360 stuff. And I think this is the same cinematographer who did the Suicide Squad, the James Gunn version, not the 2016 version that we don't talk about.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
And I think also The Flash, which I was kind of a big fan of The Flash. There's some parts of that I really liked. Other parts I did not like. But yeah, even then, I think the visual effects is definitely winning. But yeah, like I really felt like Jonathan Majors with, you know, him singing through the fire. Like, I just felt like joy while watching this, and I think this is like what exactly it's trying to do, and I'm really excited to see what James Gunn does next. Hopefully Sergeant Rock with Luca Guadagnino comes into fruition, because I think that's like the most interesting project that I want to see from this universe. But yeah, that's basically it. I don't have anything else to say. All I can say is go watch this movie, check it out at your own risk, but this is a winner for me, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this little quick review. Yeah, and keep a lookout. I'm sorry, I'm like really tired. But keep a lookout for other reviews on my channel and upcoming reviews, and, you know, like, subscribe, do the thing, whatever. Peace out.